This is Isabelle Litzer. So in today's video, I'm sharing with you how to build your personal brand. This is the result of a conversation I had last week with people who were interested in finding a job in Switzerland, like most of you. And I wanted to give a different twist to job search nowadays, rather than maybe what you're used to, especially with the personal brand. So in the past, it used to be where, and that's how most people still look for a job today, where you would just find jobs on job boards, send your application, get called, and take it from there. Now it's a little bit more complicated than this. Most people who are successful in their job search are people who have built a network and people who are very good at building their brands online. So you have to look at yourself a little bit like a product. So if you look at big brands like Coke or the products that you love, Nestle and all these things, you see a little bit how they build their brands, with their marketing. I think it's a good step. The best thing is to look what the best people in the world are doing so that you can basically get some inspiration. Now you're going to say, how is that applying for me? Well, it takes a little bit of work to bring it down basically to your level and how you're going to build your personal brand. So I'll give you 3 tips to get started. If you're interested in maybe having a workshop or a bigger presentation in Geneva about the topic or training, feel free to comment below. I'll be happy to get your feedback on it if this is a topic that you want to know more of, knowing that it's going to be the future of jobs as well. People will be recruited based on their personal brands. So the first thing basically, and I said this in the lunch where we were talking about the topic, is to have consistency. So the biggest brands out there, if you look at them, so I use the examples when I do training about the luxury brands, for example. The one thing they do very well is consistency. So you know already when you hear the music, or maybe you see a photograph, and it's always the same imagery, the same type of wording, the same type, it's repetition. And that's how people also remember the brand, is repetition. They keep seeing the same type of things and they say, oh, okay, this is Nestle, or this is Coke, or this is Nike. So the big brands are very good at this. They pick an image, they pick a world, basically a scenery that represents their brand, and that's how people know. I use the example in my training of EasyJet, for example. So EasyJet, it's cheap flights. That's what they stand for. And you would imagine that in the words that they use, the imagery that they use, it conveys this image of cheap tickets. Now, if you take a brand like Chanel or Dior, it conveys luxury. So they use very high-end type of packaging, for example. The images that they use is also very high-end. So that conveys a little bit luxury. So that's how you represent your brand and also what you do. So as an individual, for example, that's why I insist on the keywords in your resume, because the header needs to be very clear, because that's going to be you, that's going to be your brand. So that's one way to be consistent, is to use the same wording. For example, if you look at my profile, I have elevate your career everywhere, or develop your skills and grow your potential. Those are my keywords that you see everywhere on my social media. It brings consistency. Also the colors that I use on my website. So it's gold, black, and white, and also a little bit of gray. And you find that in my posts, you find that in my, if you look at my Luncheon Network, I've used the same type of colors. So colors, the type of font that you use also in your communication, all these things will bring consistency to your messages and therefore more impact. So that's number 1 tip for building your personal brand. The second thing is photos and quality of photos. It's a very simple thing that you can do, and it brings so much value. So if you're on social media, or if you have on your resume right now, but you have a very, very poor quality photograph, it's already downgrading your picture. So, I would only recommend, you have a lot of photographers now that are doing very high quality work. I know some in my network. If you don't know and you're in Switzerland right now, I can give you some names. So feel free basically to find the good photographers that will also make you look good. So you want them to know how to make you look like the type of person for the type of job that you want. So especially, I know a lot of professionals are looking for jobs in marketing and public relations and all those things. You can't look you can have an old photo of you, not very high quality. It doesn't really represent you. If you're going to do marketing for clients, you need to be out there and know to understand what it's like to do marketing. So make sure that you represent the brand that that you want to convey out there as far as you as a person. So photos, again, invest in good quality photo shoot of yourself, and those photos you can use for your LinkedIn, for your Facebook, for your resume, and that way it goes also with my first tip of consistency. They see that you have the same image in all the different photos, you represent the same type of things. So that's an easy way, in my view, to convey professionalism. So that's number 2. And number 3, and this is where it takes a little bit more work. So number 1, I help you a lot on my channel to build your brand with my webinars, well, the free webinar and photos. You just need a good photographer. That's easy. Now, the third thing that's a little bit more difficult, and that's going to put your brand on the, I would say, top 10 or whatever in your country or where you want to work, it's going to be content. So people get known because of their content. So you see the big influencers out there, the people who are called to do presentations and things like that. They're usually content producers, whether it's on video, on blogs, on maybe they wrote a book. So you can't really be out there as a top brand if you don't have a lot of content nowadays. So I'm sure all of you have possibly content, but you just don't know maybe how to put it together. We all have knowledge in whatever field it is. So if you're an expat, maybe you know something very well in your country that could be useful for someone who wants to do import-export maybe in your country. So it's very much ideas. I was talking to a friend. She also was saying that in the future, what people will really be interested in is the sharing of culture, sharing of knowledge. So it doesn't really matter where you're based right now. You probably have some knowledge that a lot of people would want to know about your country. It was still, up until today, it was very difficult to know about different places and different businesses because information was limited. But now with the web, we all have access to what's going on in Africa and China and South America. And really being a bridge between all these cultures and all this knowledge is going to be also a strength for the future. So, as an expat, you can bring a lot of value to Switzerland because maybe you know something that could be useful for a company in Switzerland, because you know your local culture and you know how people do business in your local culture. You could position yourself as a person who understands this. So whatever knowledge you have right now in your own field, don't underestimate maybe, Switzerland is not going to be interested in that, because you never know. So that could be actually your strength. So building content, produce videos and test it. Putting a video out there or a blog article doesn't cost you anything. Worst case scenario, no one reads it. Best case scenarios, you get a lot of views and recruiters are interested in you all of a sudden. So the easy way to start is also blog, because you don't have to show your face necessarily. You can be anonymous. You can use a avatar when you write. So you could be anonymous, basically. If you don't want to show your face or you're not comfortable on camera, start with blogs. That's how I started. I started writing before I did videos. So a blog is easy. It doesn't have to be very long. One of my favorite content producers, Seth Godin, is very known for his blogs, and they're usually very short, maybe very few paragraphs and very much to the point. So it could be also a design kind of signature to write very short posts. So get started. If you have the slightest, gift, I would say, for writing, that's a good way to start. If you're better with videos and you know how to get points across, do videos. Maybe you could also use design. You could do photos. Nowadays we're more into photos and telling stories with images. So if you're a storyteller with images, that could work as well. So anything that you know right now is potentially interesting for someone out there in the world, and you never know who that is until you put it out there and you're like, oh wow, I'm interested. I'm interesting for Switzerland because of this thing. So produce content would be regular content would be my advice if you want to build your brand. And then people start coming to your profile, they start visiting it, they leave comments, then you see a little bit who's interested in you. That builds rapport and maybe potential conversations. Conversations may lead to informal chats, and informal chats may lead to interviews, a little bit more formal interviews. So that for me is the way to go, especially if you're not the type of profile that's going to be a very easy profile to sell online via a job board. So really building your profile up, I call that in my first step in finding a job in Switzerland, is for me the best way. So if you have any questions, feel free to ask below on branding, personal branding. Also, as I said, if you want me to do a more formal type of training on it, you're interested, feel free to comment. Again, it would have to be in Geneva for the time being, but leave me a comment and we can chat about that. Thanks.